As the war in Ukraine continues well into its fourth year, the casualties have risen to 1.5 million and up to 400,000 dead, including tens of thousands of civilians. Even as the international attention shifts over to Gaza and Israel, the war in Ukraine has continued to be much more deadly, yet many, especially in the West, don't understand why Russia invaded or even what's happening. So without any bias or defense of either side, I'll be explaining exactly why Russia invaded Ukraine. In 2013, after Ukrainian President Yanukovych didn't sign an agreement with the EU, massive unrest spread throughout Ukraine. Protests were mostly held in Kiev, Lviv, Cherkasy, and Chernobyl, beginning Euromaidan. In January of the next year, the government began to crack down on the protests, turning these peaceful protests violent and leading to protesters gaining control of multiple government buildings. Nearly 800,000 protesters took to the street, marking the beginning of the Revolution of Dignity. The 18th through 20th of February were the bloodiest days, as thousands of protesters marched on Parliament with shields and helmets against police gunfire. On the 21st, Yanukovych fled Kiev, and the next day, Parliament voted unanimously to remove him from power. Yanukovych went to Russia, where he asked Vladimir Putin for assistance. This led to the return of the 2004 Ukrainian constitution and Russia's 2014 invasion of Crimea. In February of 2014, Russian forces occupied the Crimean Peninsula, and a month later, on March 16th, a referendum was held in Simferopol, Crimea's second largest city and capital. The result was an overwhelming 95.5% vote to join Russia, with an 83.1% turnout. It's fairly important to note that 65% of the population is ethnically Russian, and many ethnic Ukrainians and Tatars boycotted the referendum. According to polls, since the annexation, most Crimeans have been unbothered in the means in which Russia sees the peninsula, and most Crimeans also believe that they're better under Russia than Ukraine. First, as I've already stated, over half the population of Crimea is ethnically Russian and spoke Russian, and Euromaidan. Secondly, this was seen as the reconquest of Crimea. In 1783, the Crimean Khanate was annexed by Catherine the Great into Russia, alongside parts of the Ottoman Empire. During the Russian Civil War, the territory changed hands many times until 1921, when the Crimean USSR was joined with Russia. Then, in 1945, following Russian-led ethnic cleansing, it was changed to a Russian oblast until 1954, when it was transferred to the Ukrainian SSR. This was done for the 300th anniversary of the Pereiaslav Treaty, or when Ukraine was reunited with the Russian Tsardom. The third reason Russia annexed Crimea was to secure the port of Sevastopol, which had shown its usefulness during the 2008 invasion of Georgia. Without taking back Crimea, Russia was scared of being forced to use the port of Novorossiysk, a nearby port on the coast of Russia proper, which they're again using to shelter their ships against the Ukrainian-developed Neptune missiles. The port of Novorossiysk is by far inferior compared to Sevastopol, as it's less deep and farther away from the entrance to the Black Sea. A 2010 agreement had leased the port of Sevastopol to Russia until the year 2042. However, Russia was worried about the possible revocation of the lease due to the civil unrest in Ukraine, such as Euromaidan, as well as the majority of the population turning towards the west rather than to Russia. A big worry for Russia is the expansion of NATO. During the unification of Germany, the Soviets agreed to relinquish East Germany in return for NATO to stop expanding eastward. In 1999, former Soviet bloc members Poland, Czechia, and Hungary all joined NATO, followed by Estonia, Latvia, Romania, Slovenia, Bulgaria, and Slovakia in 2004, and Croatia and Albania in 2009. Then North Macedonia in 2020, Montenegro in 2017, and Bosnia and Herzegovina is a candidate, so clearly NATO did not keep its promise on that one. Right before Russia invaded Georgia in 2008, Georgia was actually on track to become a NATO member. You see, NATO has a strict rule that Russia has been abusing, which states any country with a territorial dispute basically can't join the alliance. Back in 2014, Ukraine had basically no territorial disputes, which led to Russia annexing Crimea, and support for Donetsk and Luhansk, breakaway regions in the Donbass, immediately making Ukraine ineligible. This also backfired though, because in 2023, 1 year after Russia's full-scale invasion, Finland signed into the alliance, and Sweden joined NATO in 2024. Russia wasn't too worried about Sweden joining NATO, and only a little bit about Finland, but due to the Great European Plain, Ukraine would be out of the question. The Great European Plain, a large, flat area, is extremely easy to maneuver through, meaning that any invasion of Russia from the west would be significantly easier. If Ukraine couldn't join NATO, in Putin's mind, they would be much safer. Historically, geography has always been Russia's Achilles heel. During World War II, Germany was able to sweep into Russia, and in the 11th century, the Mongols were able to ride in their horses with ease, and no matter which direction, Russia was incredibly easy to invade. Among other reasons such as fur and few people to stop them, Russia kept expanding east, conquering all of Siberia. Sticking with geography, Russia is a major gas and oil exporter to Europe, and they have to send all that oil somehow. Before Russia and Ukraine were separate countries, most pipelines actually ran through Ukraine, and nobody cared. But today, Ukraine is an independent country, and charges Russia billions of dollars to send anything to Europe through these pipes. This is what made Russia start on the Nord Stream, which sent natural gas through the Baltic Sea and straight to Germany. Nord Stream 1 was operational but was sabotaged back in 2022, and Nord Stream 2 never came online. Vladimir Putin, a former KGB officer and president of Russia, has famously wished to re-establish the Soviet Union, or at least its borders. Through organizations such as CSTO, many former members remain close to Russia, but many, like Ukraine and the Baltics, have pushed away. Even today, some members such as Armenia have begun distancing themselves from Russia. Many believe Putin wants to absorb Ukraine, Belarus, and other ex-members of the USSR back into Russia, to make it a superpower once again. For years, Russia had been conducting military exercises near the Ukrainian border, which was obviously worrying to Ukraine. Russia was always quick to deny any rumors of a full-scale invasion, and said that they have the right to conduct military exercises with their own troops in their own country. This calmed down Europe, as Russia always withdrew from the border once it's finished its exercises. However, things took a sharp turn in late 2021, when over 100,000 troops gathered near the border. Leading up to the invasion, the United States wore in Kiev with aerial footage of gear not normally involved in a military exercise. For example, massive military hospitals preparing for casualties are often not involved in an exercise, but are crucial for an invasion. 3 days before the 8th anniversary of the annexation of Crimea, Russia invaded Ukraine from Belarus, the mainland, and Crimea.